Greetings, everyone. Ah, my ZPM just died. Bob, my ZPM died. I had one ready to rock and roll, and it just pooped out on us here. We are not going to be able to power Atlantis.
I don't know what to say.
Robert Picardo, welcome back to Dial the Gate.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Congratulations on your 5 years of success.
390 shows. Thanks so much to fandom.
That's more Star Trek episodes that I've done. 390.
You landed in San Francisco Bay. This only occurred to me a couple of days ago. And now you cross the Golden Gate Bridge and you're at Starfleet Academy. There's a certain symmetry to that, don't you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, obviously, for both franchises, and I'm lucky enough to play regular characters, at least one season on Stargate Atlantis, and now in Starfleet Academy, San Francisco seems to be the nexus, the hub, and that is pretty cool. It's an interesting crossover.
You know, they were supposed to land Atlantis in New York.
Really? I did not know this. Yeah. And when and why did that change?
I think the shape of the city was the city would have fit. I think they just decided at the last minute that they wanted a different landmark. Mm-hmm. But I think that was rather perfect. What's it like? And this is a live stream, everyone. So if you're in the YouTube chat, go ahead and submit questions to Anthony and Jeremy. What's it like to be back in the holographic shoes of my second favorite fictional character of all time?
Well, I'm not going to ask you what your first is, but I think you'll volunteer it at some point. It's fun. It's not as weird or different as I thought it would be. You know, the newer shows are no longer in the kind of Star Trek speak that we did in the Rick Berman era, where we never made any contemporary references. It was all sort of mid-galactic speech, and now we talk like like kids talk today. So and as a professor teaching xenobiology, I sometimes reflect the way the kids speak, I guess, to sort of arrest their attention. You'll see more of that as the show goes on. So the language is different. Obviously, I'm older. I'm 30 years older, 20 pounds heavier, 2.5 inches shorter. So apparently I took that, what do you call it? The aging subroutine, the slow aging subroutine very seriously, because I've applied it in my personal life as well. Holograms are not supposed to age. I totally get that. And I think it's a tribute to the diehard fans that they accept me in the character still, and I still sound alike. I think I behave quite a bit alike.
No, there were a couple of things that we've known each other for 20 years now. You know how die-on-the-wool a Trekkie I am, and the fact of the matter is, as Jonathan Glassner would have said, I mean, you hang a lantern on it quite quickly, indicating about 500 years ago you started aging, which the thing that I'm thinking of is if the Janeway series gets picked up, God, I hope it does, they're going to have to CG you younger. So that's a good problem to have.
We have already, the technology definitely exists to do it in real time now. If you ever saw a company called, what are they called? Otoy, O-T-O-Y. They did a video of a goodbye scene between Kirk and Spock that never happened, and they created it digitally after the wonderful Leonard Nimoy has passed away, with the permission of his estate and with the permission and cooperation of Bill Shatner. But it's not Shatner's performance.
Sam Witwer.
Yeah, it's Sam
He's
Witwer.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And he's Sam and I are friends, at least 15 years. Wow. And the technology does exist to do what they call the digital facelift in real time. If you have enough data from prior performances of the actor that you want to do it with. So it's quite extraordinary, the technology, and I'm sure that there are other companies doing it as well. But you never know; it could always happen. Why couldn't Richard Woolsey be made 20 years younger, except that the new Stargate, I understand, is in the present day.
Yeah, it's one of Stargate's advantages to always be right alongside us and utilize contemporary parts of our culture. I'm curious, was the idea floated to age regress you for this part digitally, since the technology is there?
I don't know that it was ever really seriously. It's one of the first questions I asked, and they were not, when they first came to me and talked to me almost 3 years ago. It was in March of 2023. So just shy of 3 years of our premiere, they first spoke to me. And then, of course, everything was slowed down by the actors' strike.
Yeah.
But it's one of the first questions, and they that I asked about that, and they said, "Don't worry, it's 800 years in the future. We'll explain it away." And I had bigger things to think about than the odd coincidence that I only looked about 30 years older, even though it was 800 years in the future. It's really the whole mind-boggling concept of 800 years of digital memory, of perfect clarity in memory, and what that might do to someone. I mean, at this stage of life, as an actor, I think a lot about mortality, but my character thinks about infinity, which is a different kind of curse, I guess.
Yeah. Does he ever spend any time offline anymore?
That's a great question. I mean, he must, because there is a reference to that, frankly. Yes, there is a reference.
He goes into a void, complete and utter oblivion.
No, I think he remains active and works on things, but he requires, just a reminder for your audience, holograms require no eating, drinking, going to the bathroom, no sleep. So it's a very long day, 24 hours straight, and you have to fill your time when the rest of the organics are sound asleep. But there is I forgot, there's actually a little bit of a mention of that coming up, not a spoiler alert. And also I have a side of the Doctor, a deeper, richer side, I think, than the audience has ever seen, coming up later this season. So that'll be interesting to see how the fans react to that.
The preview of Starfleet Academy had the scene of you being very doctory, and I don't know if you know this, but your reference to Orillian lung maggots is actually something that Ethan Phillips first said in Voyager to an alien in fair trade. I
not only know that, I gave him that line.
Yes, so it was a great nod to Ethan.
It was a different creature. There are a couple of Easter eggs right in my very first scene, which I think that hardcore fans will notice, but that's one of them. It was some sort of a worm, and I corrected them. I think it was written as ringworm.
Regular bloodworms, maybe?
No. Ringworm.
Ringworms
is not a worm. It's a skin rash, but it has nothing to do with. It's not a parasitic worm. So I suggested to them that we could not only correct it and make it a real parasitic worm, but I suggested Orillian lung maggots just because I like to say it.
You probably wondering what I'm trying to do. I had my mobile emitter ready to go, and I don't have it anymore, Bob.
I'm sorry. I have several of them, but most of them are at home, not here in Toronto with me.
Well, they got to be on their docks charging somewhere. How much input? I don't know if you can tell me where you're at in production at this point, but how much input have you had in the character this go around as opposed to last time?
They have been great to me about listening to either suggestions or comments. They know that I have a long history with the role and quite a good memory of what, at least not only my character's development, but what we did on Voyager with the character. And I remember, a lot of moments, lines, scenes. So if I say to them, hey, we have an opportunity here to reference this or something, they have been very gracious in listening to me, and often will take the suggestion and shoot it, which is what we did in the pilot. I said to them, the out of the scene was supposed to be the joke line where she has swallowed a Combadge, which of course a lot of people have taken issue with a Starfleet cadet swallowing a Combadge.
She's a kid.
It's basically a joke, but think of it this way. You put your Combadge on your nightstand when you go to bed in your, your little cadet dorm room, and then in the middle of the night, you reach over, to take a melatonin and you swallow your Combadge. It's possible. It's totally possible. The way I look at it is this way. I went to a very prestigious Ivy League college, and there were some legacy students there that were not quite up to snuff with, I think, those of us that really had to fight our way in and get in on scholarship. As an example, there was this guy named George W. something. He was a famous drinker, belonged to the fraternity of all the screw around guys who, and then he went off and he ended up, I hear, becoming president of some country or other. So in other words, some of the legacy students where dad and grandpa went to that, Yale or went to Starfleet Academy, they may take a little while to sort of get it together, to become and if they don't measure up, they won't stay there. But I don't think I think it's an opportunity for a certain amount of humor, and everyone should just relax.
Look, here's the thing. You and I both know people, not ourselves, of course, who have thrown these things into the toilet completely by accident.
Yes,
so
of course.
I really don't.
I've done it. I think I may have done it once myself.
I've not. I swear to God, I've not.
Yeah.
But I've come close.
And we would never. And because of that one thing, would we never get into Starfleet Academy?
Exactly
other than the
right.
fact that we're too old and all that other stuff. So
exactly.
I just think that yes, I do think that intentionally, Starfleet Academy is trying to incorporate some of the humor that we saw in Lower Decks. They're trying to build on all of the earlier iterations of the show, and I think that's I think it's fun. When the chips are down, everybody is going to be smart and do well. But I think for the lighter moments, I am okay with that we have moments where we think, gee, I don't know that cadet's necessarily going to make it through all the entire program.
They might all not. That's not everyone. Look at Wesley Crusher, for crying out loud. Not everyone's path is Starfleet Academy. I think that one of the things that Ron Moore did so well, that was a very healthy approach, and I don't think that Gene necessarily would have been thrilled with it because Wesley was like his analog. For crying out loud, it was his middle name. But I think that I hope that part of this show will be you truly finding your own way. And not you specifically, but the kids. And Starfleet, you're there. The institution is there to help build you into the person that you're going to be, and you're there to also leave something behind with it as well. And it might not always be a diploma that you walk away with. So it's a really broad canvas that you can execute. And I've got to ask. You're probably going to shoot me for asking this, but it's my one giddy little schoolgirl Star Trek question that I'm hoping that you can yes or no. One of my favorite episodes from all of Voyager, which was up there with TNG in terms of my favorite Star Trek, was Living Witness. You say you've done how many seasons have you shot now?
You're speaking of Starfleet Academy?
Starfleet Academy.
We are finishing season 2. We're a couple.
I did not want anybody to want to say it. Do you know the fate of the EMH backup module?
I think there's been a lot of questions about that, and I can confidently say that it's been talked about. But we will not know the fate as of now. Okay. But I think it's a very interesting question. The fans remember clearly that they launched a backup program of the Doctor into the same timeline that Starfleet Academy takes place in. So I've gotten an awful lot of questions about it. So I will simply say that it's I am thinking about it, but we have not addressed that as of this point, which is why we need to run a full, 5 years.
5 years, absolutely.
So we have the opportunity to answer all of those very important questions.
I think that it's awfully interesting that fans hang so strongly onto that version of the character. At that point in Trek canon, that was the farthest ahead we had ever been. So I think that's part of it.
And now it's become, a regular temporal address in Star Trek, whereas it was just this sort of outlier. I completely agree. And Tim Russ, my wonderful castmate, directed that episode. I think it's really one of our best.
Yes.
The whole topic of revisionist history, I remember at the time there was a lot in the news. There still is about Holocaust denialism. So it really was a very interesting theme, the idea of rewriting history to pursue a political agenda. And what was interesting about Living Witness is that it was impossible that there was an organic survivor of that time period that has been rewritten. It had to have been a technological survivor 700 years on, or however many hundred years from the actual event of the genocide that the Voyager captain and crew have been blamed with, falsely. Now we see history being denied when we have the video, and history happened yesterday. So it's a very complicated issue, I think, and one that's going to continue to plague us.
I love the theme in that episode, though, which reminds all of us, and the Doctor is at the end of it, he's resolved to say, you know what, this is just what I saw, but I don't want to be responsible for all of this death that's about to happen. And then his companion says, look, history has been abused. If you don't help us now, it'll be another 700 years. The truth is important. What actually happened is important. Trust yourself to stand up tall and face it with boldness. And I think that that's one of the better shows. The Trek pantheon is full of big ideas. And there's always a Star Trek, Star Wars push-pull continuum. Alex Kurtzman is a huge Star Wars fan. He's now really getting his feet wet with Star Trek. What big ideas do we have to look forward to that you can give us a taste of in the 2 seasons that you have worked on Starfleet Academy?
I don't know that. Yeah, I can't answer that really because, I'm not allowed to give away things. But the biggest idea really is the core values of Star Trek, of diversity and inclusion. We're in a political moment where those are being questions rolled back. People are arguing over what that means and how much is enough and how much is too much and all that. And Star Trek is 60 years old, and so much has changed in the 60 years since Star Trek premiered. Why wouldn't our concept and understanding of diversity have changed and grown as well? We can't expect a 1966 idea of what diversity means in a 2026 Star Trek show. So there has been a lot of discussion and some backlash, I would say, in the hardcore fan community over too much diversity and how many, remember, we had one interracial kiss in 3 years in the 60s. And now we've got other stuff, other things. We have more black and brown characters. We have a lesbian relationship in the show. These are all things that reflect changes in our culture in the last 60 years. So even though, there's an awful lot of discussion about how much is enough and how much is too much, I stand by the importance of Star Trek not only maintaining its values, but that the values grow and change in the same way that the communicators have changed in 6 years. And all of the toys that you see on screen that used to look impossibly futuristic in the 60s and now look so silly, the medical tricorder on the little strap, and waving things around now. So it's and here's, I guess, my greatest point. I recall with Voyager, and I think pretty much every iteration of Star Trek after the original, and certainly the original had its own battles to fight, has been questioned or criticized. We got a lot of blowback on Voyager because we had the first female captain leading a Star Trek series. And, in the rosy rearview mirror, there's great affection for all of these shows. But I remember while we were making them, there was a lot of discussion that, we didn't really hit our stride till season 3 and all that. And now it's all about, the attention you get. You're put under a microscope immediately. We got glorious reviews in major publications for Starfleet Academy. But, 30 years ago, if I say we got better reviews in my recollection than Voyager got 30 years ago, well, back then, reviews in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Daily Variety, Hollywood Reporter, all of that meant something. Now, it seems that there's just so many voices in social media now that can overshadow what used to be a critical success out of the gate. So, we'll see. I hope the show is given a chance to breathe and grow, which is what all new Star Trek shows do, and that we don't kill the baby in the cradle. That's all.
Who among the new cast has surprised you the most to work alongside?
Surprised me the most?
As a performer, you've watched these people now for a while.
Holly Hunter is an actress I have admired for decades. Broadcast news, which predicted so much of what's changed in the function of news in our culture. Is a great movie. She's given really major performances in so many movies that I was excited to work with her. She is unique in her take on her character.
Oh yeah,
she is deeply committed. She has a tremendous work ethic, I would say. Along with Kate Mulgrew, who I've now served with 2 female captains, they are both not only brilliant actresses, but 2 of the hardest working people that I've ever worked with, immaculately prepared. So I can't say that any of that surprised me. I expected that from her. But it's been wonderful to see her really grow in this new world, because, she would ask me a lot of questions early on about Star Trek. And
oh, good. She wanted to get it right.
Yeah, she wanted to talk about things and ask about it. Sometimes it was the whole saga of Star Trek. Sometimes it was specific questions about, Star Trek technology, or, what. It could be a very tiny question, or it could be sort of a big philosophical question about Star Trek. So yes, she definitely wants to do her own thing. Yeah. But she also, I think, has embraced the dual aspect of her role. She's not only a captain. She is not only an administrator at a school. She is both. And that is why her style, her way of relating to the students is very much, I want, the slang term would be touchy-feely. She's a more touchy-feely kind of a commander than we're used to seeing. And I think that is as much because she is shaping the future of basically still very young minds. The characters are all supposed to be 18, 19, 20, 21. Mm-hmm. And also, but also she has a history in Starfleet. As a commander. So she knows, she's balancing both things. Remember, she left Starfleet and was teaching kindergarten for 13 years. So she's got a lot of different influences in her, in the way she chooses to lead. Mm-hmm. And I really like all that, because to me, it's just boring to do the same things over and over again. It's a new show. It's on the shoulders of recent, who would have ever thought that the Lower Decks would ever succeed when I first heard, I mean, they're making a cartoon of Star Trek. I thought, really? That doesn't sound like, and then you're surprised, if you just, and Prodigy also
if I may,
was a delightful surprise.
If I may insert, and I know exactly the trail of thought that I want to come back to, because there's a little bit of good cop, bad cop going on with her lieutenant, so to speak. I never expected the modern era of Star Trek to provide me with my favorite iteration of modern Trek on Nickelodeon. If you said that to me 20 years ago, I might have laughed in your face. And it's true. That show was magic. And the fact that it didn't get a third season, the second season finishes, it's a great, if it is an ending, it's a great one, but it's criminal that they didn't give it a third one.
I think everyone was surprised, perhaps Kate, most of all. I think Kate really enjoyed doing that and was deeply proud of it. And the response was so good, great. And, it seemed ostensibly a show to introduce, obviously, the youngest new viewers of Star Trek and bring them in to the saga. But I am surprised with how many adults not only watched it with their children, but adults who either have grown children or don't have children sat down and loved that show. So it had a really broad appeal, and also the animation was just such a wonderful world.
Very well done.
It was creating really well done, feature film quality, as we say. So yeah, and I'm proud to have been in that. And frankly, at least according to Alex Kurtzman, that helped give them the idea, I think, to make me a teacher. He said, when we were in Vegas and I called him on the phone in front of 6,000 fans during a panel, he said, it seemed natural that the doctor who had taught young cadets in Prodigy would still be teaching, at Starfleet Academy further on down the line, time-wise. So that, I think, actually helped establish the idea. And then another weird thing that kind of got me ready in an odd way for the show was the COVID pandemic. I mean, during the pandemic, when none of us had anything to do, and we couldn't act with anyone else because we had to isolate and all that, I started doing these little videos online where I would take a well-known speech of my character and redo it in some beautiful setting around the world. And I called them Technobabble al fresco. So I had revisited 30 or 40 episodes of Star Trek where I would pick something, like a famous exchange I'd had, and I would relearn the lines and do it again. So in a funny way, doing that just to entertain myself and to entertain fans who followed me online during the pandemic, it was a way of kind of reintroducing the character and his voice into my present day brain, which I hadn't thought about for a while. So it was an odd kind of, had the corollary effect of warming me up, I guess, to come back and play the character and really, really devote myself to have him sound the same and have the same pace and energy that he had. I really wanted to, be still able to blast through the dialogue as quickly as possible. I'm a big fan of science fiction spoken quickly. I always say that, especially the exposition. Get it over with. Take the moments. If there's an emotional moment happening, take the moment. But if it's
Also, I mean, he wants to get back to singing to himself. I mean, these are the things that make the character happy. Do you get any have you had any input on anything that he hums to himself or anything that he gets to sing?
Oh yeah, well they hummed, because I knew that I was going in the pilot. You hear me singing, humming a little bit of Mozart, because in the very next episode I knew I was going to be singing the Papagena duet from the Magic Flute. I was happy they picked that. I kind of knew that one. The other piece of opera I sang in the second episode, which is from Fidelio, which is Beethoven's only opera, and Beethoven, a genius, but maybe the reason he only wrote one opera was it wasn't his forte. It was very, very difficult for someone like me who doesn't read music to learn, and I worked it very hard. I do regret that they didn't show a little more of the interaction I had with that wonderful Canadian opera singer who was in the makeup, that beautiful face of hers and that ridiculous alien makeup, because we had staged both pieces completely and you don't see any of it. Yeah, it was really, I was disappointed only because we really worked on the whole. I mean, I understood that we're the entertainment in a very important diplomatic scene, which is really the plot of the show. But I had hoped they would cut a little bit more, so we saw flashes of our unique staging. But you know, who knows? Maybe in the future we'll be singing again.
Absolutely. Did they bring in a vocal coach for you to make sure you nail some things?
What I did, which turned out to be smart, there was a very short lead time to learn both pieces of music. So they pre-recorded the woman, and then they hired a real opera singer to pre-record it. And I learned it and sang it along with him. And then I sang it myself in post-production. That was very wise, because if I'd given myself too much to focus, obviously you're always going to sing to playback on the stage because it's going to sound better. But if I'd forced myself to be ready to record it on that narrow time frame, I don't think I would have done as well as I ended up doing. And with the additional time to work on it, and Jeff Russo, who is our wonderful composer, you know, musical director, conductor, everything on the show, worked with me, and we in one recording session we knocked it all out. Something that a professional opera singer could have done in 15 minutes took me 4 hours, but I did it.
There is a baby hologram in this show, and she is a charming character. Is there going to be is she and your characters a point of focus at all
in the
series in terms of seeing things similarly?
I would say that there is some really wonderful interaction between our two characters coming up. Okay. That was great fun. First of all, she's just a delightful human being. Carice is just one of those unique talents that just the light of her personality shines through her. You know, it just bursts out of her. There's something about her that it's beyond just acting skill. She emanates light. So yeah, a lot of people really love what she's doing out of the gate. And yes, we have a very unique, because we're both holograms. You saw the beginning of that. You see in the pilot that I'm holding her at arm's length, and we'll see more of the struggle of her to get to know me, to get to know me better. And that is the key to some very wonderful moments, I think, that I really enjoyed playing later in the season. So yes, you will see more of the two of us together.
The newcomer that surprised me the most, frankly, please name check me here. Gina Yashere?
Yeah, Yashere.
Lura Thok. I adore this character, because I was looking forward to an Admiral Brand type from First Duty, you know, and that's not who Holly Hunter is. And then you bring this woman in, and it's like, hot damn, here we go. Because that's the house that I was raised in. You know, that's what I respond to. Like, yes, sir. You know, whatever you need. And she delivers.
She is, well, first of all, I don't know whether you know this, she is a very accomplished stand-up comedian and actress and writer and producer. She had a Chuck Lorre produced show called Bob Loves, and I can't remember the Nigerian name, Abishaya, I think it was. So she co-created that show, wrote a character for herself. So she is a writer, producer, comedian, and just wonderful on stage when she does her own stuff. So she's this bundle of energy and humor. And, you know, when you play a character that's buried in makeup, it's it's fun how she pops through it. And yes, there's been a lot of really great feedback. I mean, of course, all the fans were like, "Oh, she's half Jem'Hadar. They all have to be male." It's like, well, first of all, we did make up Jem'Hadar, so we can make up how another 800 years in the future, since they were genetically, created, we could genetically alter them. I mean, this whole tenacious thing about I know the canon, don't mess with my canon. It's like, remember, guys, we can fire off the cannon.
As long as it's acknowledged and you acknowledge it, and now we move on. That's that you've got folks there who know the canon.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get that they do. But remember, the great thing is when you do something different, there will eventually be a backstory that explains, that makes it, not only makes it okay that you changed the canon, it actually makes it more interesting that you did it. And again, I'm not speaking specifically what we're, because we haven't dug, frankly, that far back in her past yet. But if, in future seasons of the show, those are the kind of things that people, when you love a character, you want to know how she came to be, right? So those are the characters that are most interesting to have, origin story flashbacks and whatnot. So
for sure.
But she is, I think she's great, and she is a breath of of energy and authority.
No, yeah, and you need that opposite the Aki type of character,
especially
to reinforce that with these kids.
And she's not sold. I mean, you'll see her looking askance at her captain on it takes a while. They have to earn. Everybody has to earn the trust and respect, especially when they seem different than you expect them to be.
Sure. I got some fan questions for you from the audience. Evie Cahill wanted to know, in Innerspace, when Martin Short's character transforms into yours, you play his nervous energy through the cowboy's swagger. How did the two of you pull that off? And what do you remember about filming Innerspace?
Joe Dante is a wonderful guy to work with. I'd worked with him before. He has said in other interviews that when he did not know how to cast a character, he would simply give it to me. I think the cowboy is an example of that. I did have to read on video for Spielberg. I remember Joe saying, Steven thinks, he should be scary, and I want him to be funny. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot a scary audition for Steven, and then once you get the part, we'll do what we want. So we shot a scary kind of Sergio Leone audition, but it was still silly because the character was described, you didn't know where he was from. And I wanted to do some Middle Eastern kind of accent. It was basically, I got language tapes from the Farsi Language Institute, not to speak in Farsi, but to hear the man saying, and now say it like this, and I wanted to do this. All I know is he's completely made up. There were like 6 or 8 lines in the script, so I ad-libbed a lot of what I said. And when we had to do the gag that your questioner has asked about, I asked if Martin Short would be willing to, on video, do the scenes that I had to impersonate him on, and then I would, borrow from his choices. And that's what we did. And then a few years later, when we were shooting Body and Soul, where 7 of 9 had to be inside, the Doctor program had to be inside 7, we did the same thing. I told Robbie McNeil, our castmate who was directing, I said, we did this on Innerspace. It worked great. Let me shoot the scenes that Jerry has to play me in, and so she can watch them. And she just killed it, knocked it out of the park. So,
my regards to the chef.
It's the same gag. And I'll tell you, we stole that. The thing with the cheesecake was my suggestion. Well, it's stolen from Randy Quaid in National Lampoon vacation movie when his brother-in-law Chevy Chase shows up. He's drinking a beer, and he goes, "You want a cool one? You want a cold one?" And Chevy goes, "Sure." and then he hands him the one he's drinking and gets a new one for himself. I think it's the best laugh. It's the best laugh in the movie. So I did say to Robbie and to Jerry, I said, I think we should do that with the cheesecake. And I do think that's one of the best laughs.
Bob,
you want a piece here? Take the one I've had.
You resume this one. My waistline, because of that episode, probably increased several centimeters. I had never touched a cheesecake in my life. It is one of my favorite, and I'm not a sweet eater. It is one of my favorite desserts now. Is a good New York cheesecake. And
Jerry Ryan,
that episode that's your fault.
And Jerry Ryan, with that amazing physiology she has, could actually eat cheesecake. I mean, she would pack food away like a football player and still had that, perfect physique. So, and she's still the same way every time if you have dinner with her, she eats with gusto and enthusiasm.
Jeez, there you go.
So she has, I would say, a miraculous physiology.
Conflict Serum wanted to know, did Woolsey, at any point, did that character make you examine yourself at all? We've talked a little bit about where you were at your time, at that time in your life, when a lot of men think that they are beginning to phase out of their purpose and what they have. Did you, in Malazzi and Molly producing that show beautifully, did you reassess anything about yourself in looking at that, back on that character?
I would say, without being too redundant from the earlier conversation we had, it was a man well into middle age and late middle age, who was trying to redefine himself. Mm-hmm. And as I said in our last discussion, it happened to be, we were doing that at a moment in time when there'd been a financial crisis and a lot of people my age and older had lost their retirements and they had to go back in the workplace. So there was all sorts of analogies in the contemporary world that were happening. But for me, after being on another science fiction series, playing a very specific, artificial intelligence character with kind of a mannered way of speaking, to go to play Woolsey, who was introduced as a relentlessly unfunny character. I mean, he had no humor at all.
Just rigid. You played rigid through the whole thing.
And what was so wonderful about Joe and Paul, once they decided they liked me and started to bring the character back, they kept introducing glimmerings of humanity, glimmerings of self-doubt, glimmerings of, of just other things to play. Because if you're going to play a character who's, let's face it, an asshole, you really want the audience to wonder why he is the asshole he is. How did he become that way? How does he feel about it? I mean, if you're just playing an asshole who has no self-awareness and just go, that is only interesting for so much time. And what became fun about Woolsey is that he started to self-examine and say, I don't want to be the way I am anymore. And so that, I can't say that it was a fun acting challenge. I don't know that it necessarily changed me, Bob, and say I don't want to be the way I am anymore. I do know that I wanted very consciously in this other major science fiction franchise to be different than I had been in the other one. I wanted the characters, even though I look the same, it's the same bald head. Yeah, we put glasses on me in a different space jumpsuit, but still I wanted to be a different entity. So that was the biggest challenge, was to slowly show glimmerings of humanity, and then the audience ultimately embraced him, and he ultimately became a leader. And he had no, remember, he was only there to evaluate other people's leadership skills. He didn't have any of his own. He just, he just told, do as I say, not as I do. He's the living picture of that. He had no ability to lead himself, and he had to teach himself. So it really was fun. It was great to be at that moment in a science fiction franchise where we could be in the present day, we didn't have to, what the language wasn't as carefully controlled as Star Trek was. And now, ironically, that I'm in the new versions of Star Trek, I remember the way we speak now feels a lot like Stargate felt.
Yeah.
The language being more contemporary and idiomatic. So that is one thing about coming back to Star Trek with the freer languages. It reminds me of my Stargate days rather than the old Star Trek days. So in any case, I think that, Woolsey ended up being from very humble beginnings and unpleasant character beginnings, ended up being a really wonderful ride to have as an actor.
I don't know how much. I'm trying to recall. I think we may have discussed it a little bit, but certainly not on Dial the Gate. My favorite Woolsey moment is one that Brad Wright wrote in a very personal story for him called The Shrine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a scene that's in your office. And I think
with Jason?
I think it is the most touching that the character gets when he lowers his guard and explains the Alzheimer's story about his dad. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the finest scenes in Stargate, where
I remember
he puts his guard down.
I remember the lines or the moment, and wasn't it with Jason Momoa's character? I thought it was a character.
Yes, I think he's trying to explain that, this is probably what happened to you, and Jason's like, I owe him this. We're going to do this. And Woolsey lets them go. Yeah. But it's a beautiful moment, just relating that, his dad had a moment of clarity. He said, Richard, what are you doing here? I said, Dad, I'm here to see you. He says, isn't that nice? Mm-hmm. And then he was gone again. And we'll be experiencing something very similar very soon. Brad certainly had. And it's moments like that where you have a chance with your character to connect to an audience who is either, many of whom have experienced something like that or will at some point one day. And they have that to think back on, and to hold on to when they do deal with life. And I think that that's the thing that science fiction and entertainment in general, but really science fiction really does the best.
It's exciting that in this moment, as we are speaking, they are working on the new Stargate. I don't know any details at all, but I know some of the people involved, and we all got this sort of beautiful email when it was about to be announced. Mm-hmm. From Martin Garrow, who is just a great guy. I worked with him not only back in the day, but on his reboot of Quantum Leap. And he's just one of those, really like, it's not unlike Brad and Joe Malazzi and Paul. Mm-hmm. There's certain kinds of showrunners that are just so, easy to talk to. So, They bear their responsibility and the weight of responsibility running the show very lightly on their shoulders. They never make you feel like they're the boss. You know what I mean? I've said many times that Stargate was like the easiest show I ever worked on. Everybody was so nice. I didn't have to audition for it. I'd say, hey, can I try another line? Yeah, sure. And then if they liked it, they thanked you after. It was just Star Trek was hard work. It was hard work. And there was a lot of feeling that we're very tightly controlled. But Stargate had this great feeling of like, hey, we're in the playground and we get to have a good time. And that I really appreciated that at that time in my career. So the point is, I know that they're all in a room somewhere right now.
Right now, they sure are. Yeah. And if you get tapped on the shoulder, will you come back? Schedule permitting?
They know I loved working with them, and my expectation is that it would be in a small capacity if they were to have Mr. Woolsey back, but I would absolutely love to return to that character and to show up again in their new show. Stargate has I don't know if it, there was always kind of a wink and a nod to the audience that, Star Trek takes itself pretty seriously, especially all the shows. But Stargate, and I think it's really from Richard Dean Anderson, because he had that capacity to share with the audience. Look, we're going to save the world in 43 minutes. Watch. He had that kind of impish sort of thing going on that kind of colored the whole show. We know we're in a show. We know it's impossible. We're going to beat impossible odds. Watch us. And that was a different kind of, sort of breaking the fourth wall thing that was a lot of fun.
Oh, man, he did it all the time. One of my favorite lines is someone points to Christopher Judge and says, he is Jaffa. And Rick goes, no, but he plays one on TV. And it's like, I mean, damn, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, he there's no one like him, Really.
Raj Luthra. What's going on at the Planetary Society? We had Bill Nye on last month. It was great to see him. Mm-hmm. He said you just spent the night at his place.
Oh, yeah.
So for a board meeting or something,
We are great. Yeah, he stays at my place sometime, even when we're not there. You know what I mean? Our homes
Here's the key.
To each other. And I officiated his wedding. I hope he told you that.
Yes, he did.
So, yeah,
yes,
we're friends. We have a common passion, which is known as space. Bill has been leading for the last 15 years. And as of just now, they've announced his succession. He has been leading our organization, the Planetary Society, which is the world's leading space advocacy group, founded by Carl Sagan and two others in 1980. So this is our, 46th year. Yeah. Carl Sagan felt that in the early 80s that the public engagement with the space program was kind of waning, their interest, their awareness of what was going on after, the nation was on fire with the March to the Moon in the 60s.
Right.
But by the time we got to the early 80s, he knew that, that ongoing funding for NASA was critical on the public's interest and engagement in what we were doing. And we are the leading authority on what's happening in space now. We have marshaled our forces and all of our members to fight the proposed budget cuts to NASA space science and other science programs. And it was just recently announced last week that all of those proposed cutbacks have been eliminated. So we fought that battle, and we had, I think 140 of our members came to DC earlier this year it was during the government shutdown, but we had an event there. We got a lot of attention. I have a picture of me in Chuck Schumer's office where we're both going like this, and he's pretty good at it.
It's not easy to do.
And not easy at all, especially with both hands. If you're ambi, So the Planetary, I urge anyone listening that if you have never heard of the Planetary Society, just punch in your search box www.planetary.org, and it's a great source of information. It'll tell you how you can get involved if you want to ensure a bright future for NASA and our space program. If we have people that we keep very close tabs on what programs our missions may be cut. First of all of that investment we've already made, if they stop monitoring the data that's coming back, all of these programs that were active, one of the budget cuts to space science would have meant that we would have been junking billions of dollars of investment. We would no longer be benefiting from the data coming back because we just pulled the plug on them. And in long story short, if it just helps you, if you're a science fiction fan, you really love science, and if you don't know that, then visit the Planetary Society website and see how cool it is, what we're actually doing, not just what we're pretending to do in Star Trek.
9 minutes at the top of the hour. The last note for you. 40 years ago today, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. I can't believe it's been that long.
No, I cannot. I remember, like I'm sure everyone, I remember exactly what I was doing. I was putting a lighting fixture in the first house I managed to buy in the hallway. I'm up on a ladder and I'm listening, and it's right around the corner. The television's on for the launch. I I listened to a wonderful podcast on the Daily, the New York Times show, just a couple of days ago, commemorating that, about the whole O-ring story and the whole investigation into it, and how the push for the launch on that very cold day was ill-advised. How they knew that the O-rings under very cold circumstances would become more rigid, and that fuel could escape laterally, and there was a great push at the time because NASA wanted, there was a lot of attention on it. For student teacher, Krista McAuliffe in space. It's one of those things where the enthusiasm outran the safety considerations through, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but it was, of course, a great lesson, and a lot of changes were instituted at NASA after that. It's just one of the great tragedies and NASA is really, in my opinion, and Bill Nye's opinion, one of our greatest, if not our greatest, name brand as a nation. So many extraordinary accomplishments, but there are those moments, those two shuttle tragedies,
Columbia,
and that are just that remind us that going into space is a very dangerous thing. And even though the space shuttle made it routine, there were so many, successful missions, the danger remains, and there are so many variables, and it takes constant vigilance and constant, redundancies in safety measures. So yes, it's a very sad, it's a sad anniversary, and the tragedy also of all of those young people watching because of the student teacher. I mean, it was,
that's right.
It was not only a tragedy that it happened, but the world, the eyes of the world were on it. And so, it's just a reminder that space is difficult, and you can't make big, you can't say, oh, I want to go to Mars, but I don't want to do space science. You can't cut out all of the necessary steps and all of the learning steps to build your trip of humans to Mars. You can't just go and cut all of the underpinnings out. It's all part of one picture, our future in space. So you must continue to fund the science, as well as you can't do the human missions, the ambitious human missions, without doing all of the science that leads up to making it safe. So we do not ever, ever, ever have that kind of a tragedy again.
Robert Picardo, thank you.
Thank you. A pleasure.
I appreciate you, sir. I'm going to wrap up the show on this end. You can go ahead and log out. And
all right, I will say,
looking forward to seeing you.
EMH out.
Be well, sir. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Robert Picardo, everyone. That is Richard Woolsey in Stargate, Atlantis, and the EMH Doctor on Starfleet Academy. I had my concerns about that show. A lot of people whom I trust in terms of their opinions and for their reviews were not thrilled with it. I turned it on. I watched it. I had a good time. Not every show has to be exactly the same formula. It has to present us with good ideas. If it does that, if it makes me think, if it makes me lean back and shut my brain off, I'm not going to watch it. And Alex Kurtzman, in my opinion, has done a lot of damage to this brand. But he's also swung for the fences a couple of times as well. And I think that he can with this, especially with folks like Robert Picardo on that cast as well. The Doctor is my second favorite fictional character of all time, right behind Ebenezer Scrooge. And I think that it has a reasonable shot, but it has to be given a chance. So my profound thanks to Bob Picardo for coming on and telling us about that production. Space Shuttle Challenger consisted of 7 members who tragically died 73 seconds after liftoff. On January the 28th, 1986, due to a structural failure caused by O-ring seal damage and cold temperatures, the crew included Commander Francis Scobie, pilot Michael Smith, specialist Ron McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Judith Resnick, Gregory Jarvis, and teacher Krista McAuliffe. We remember them on this day. My name is David Reed. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project in this super extended Season 5 episode. No, we are not starting off with Season 6 just yet. That is going to be February the 7th with Joe Flanagan. The complete list of shows, there's nearly 20 of them, are all located at dialthegate.com right now. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but I do want to mention a few people who are making this season happen. Tilamakos Compaños, who is joining us as a video editor. I'm thrilled to have him. And he is Greek, and he has been helping me with some new software to figure things out. Ian Bernardo, our software designer, he's an extraordinary computer scientist, and Martin McLean as well. The two of them are cooking up something very special. Bryce Orrs created a main title sequence for this episode, but we're actually going to be moving it to the introduction for season 6 with Joe Flanagan, because one of my other graphics designers is not actually going to be able to make the shot in time. So we're going to move. He's got a beautiful shot that we're going to share with you flying over the city. So that's going to be the introduction of season 6 when we have Flanagan on. Jacob Oleash, he's running my transcriber team. If you want to use this software tool that we've developed to transcribe about 43% of our backlog of archived transcripts need processed, you are more than welcome to join us. Just email me at dialthegateshow@gmail.com and we'll get you set up with that. There are so many folks that are helping to bring this season along. My tremendous thanks to my moderators for this episode, my mod captain Anthony and Jeremy, who assisted in pulling this off. I had a number of them involved in this as well. Really appreciate you guys. And Frederick Marcoux over at dialthegate.com. He's helping create a new version of the site that I'm hoping to have ready by the time that we have Flanagan. There's a lot of stuff coming, and Stargate is hot to trot. It may be a beat or two before it comes back, but we're going to be really ready for it. I think that's all that I have. I want to double check here. I think that we're good. That's it. Appreciate y'all tuning in. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate, and I will see you guys on the other side very soon.